So Art Basel is it's an art fair where many different galleries all come to show some of the most unique, some of the most acclaimed artwork that they're in possession of to make that connection with private collectors for the most part. And it's just a very spectacular event in the very definition of the word, in that every direction there's something to saturate your senses with color, sometimes sound, structure, and artwork that really pushes the limits of understanding. And then also a lot of more contemporary artwork that is kind of showing the roots of where these new directions are coming from. So as we went from Wynnwood to Basel, the art world changed, and so did the surroundings. We went from a world that was chaotic and out of control to a place where there was still spontaneity, but everything was contained within a frame. And it actually gave me more questions about ways that we can maybe move or think as we move forward. How can we reach the whole art world? How can we make sure that we are influencing at every level? How do we build our brand in such a manner as to attract collectors and possibly even investors to our work? How do we make that bigger impact in media?
How does a project like Wynnwood benefit the community?
Wynnwood has definitely benefited from the community in numerous ways. One of the most impactful ways was its transformation. It was completely abandoned, so much so that businesses and residents wanted nothing to do with it. And now it's a thriving neighborhood that supports artists, businesses, and is now a destination for all to enjoy. Another one of Wynnwood's unique qualities is that it's a unifying community. All walks of life are welcomed, regardless of your race, social status, or age. It's also a community that is inspiring to all, whether you're an artist or not. I feel that PSA draws a lot of parallels in what we are doing in our community. Both areas are building a community around the arts and inspiring passions for all.
Can you talk a little bit about the sidewalk art that we saw where we were there?
Yeah, the sidewalk art that we saw is indicative of everything in Wynnwood Walls. Every surface is covered. Every space is a canvas. So artists were basically allowed to create where they saw fit. And so some wanted to express an idea down on the ground where you were looking at it as you passed by, so it caught your eye. Some were putting it on the wall for display so you could look at it and think about it. And others were just tucked in the corners and on the backs of things just because that was what the artist intended. So the sidewalk art was inspirational in general and in nature, and it was pretty thought-provoking, but it looked like it was designed for people who were on their way from A to B, who were meant to be disrupted and inspired.
So based on your experience in Wynnwood so far, do you think that it can be replicated in other cities or towns?
Based on the experiences that I've had, I think Wynnwood could be replicated in other cities and towns. There's a special blend of what went into its development. There was a lot of forward thinking and developers and investors that were willing to actually put forward the resources to prove the model. But I think other communities, once they see a good idea in action, are much more willing to follow its lead. So I think Wynnwood paved the way for a completely new type of urban revitalization where you celebrate the strengths of a diverse community and you don't have the same risk of gentrification or loss of those artistic styles and elements that make a community what it is. So Wynnwood really stepped out on its own as a major mecca for urban art and graffiti. I think other towns may learn from that and be able to look at it. And the way that Wynnwood did it isn't going to drive out or cheapen the graffiti artist. I think it makes a home for them. So I think likewise, communities that are trying to replicate or draw inspiration from what is going on with Wynnwood, they won't have the exact same combination of factors or strengths or results, but they could learn from celebrating the artist and the diversity and letting the creativity drive the process rather than trying to overmanage it and microengineer it, which usually is what leads to the decline or the gentrification or the loss of the creativity that makes it so vibrant.
How did Wynnwood start?
Well, Wynnwood is more of a case for how art can really transform a neighborhood. Wynnwood, as the rest of Miami Beach or Miami in general, kind of comes to life in the first week of December, and it explodes with art and everything that's creativity itself. And Wynnwood takes front and center when it comes to public art and raw creativity. It's sort of a case study for how art can transform a neighborhood. It all started with a man called Tony Goldman. He actually bought some property out in this neighborhood called Wynnwood, and he wanted to have it decorated with street art from a lot of different artists. So he reached out to about 30 artists that were popular around the time. They still are popular, and basically asked them if they can come in and collaborate in this project that he was working on to put some artwork on the walls of these buildings that he bought. And they came out, they were totally for it, they loved what they were doing. They rose to the occasion, they came out to Miami, they started painting on the walls that he offered them. And they put together about 30 pieces that were in this small part of Wynnwood, and that is now called Wynnwood Walls. From then on, the neighborhood kind of became destination for the rest of Miami, when, especially in the week during Art Basel, people from all over the world come here for this specific reason. If you ask me to explain what Wynnwood Walls is in the shortest way possible, I would say it's a 30 to 40 block radius of just raw art expression. Free art everywhere, exhibitions, installations, fine art, street art and graffiti, where it all comes to life in one single place.
We put the faith in the concrete sculpture. Yeah, the concrete mask, concrete world with the concrete art. You no see your mother in a year and a half. You're more concerned with the man in the glass. Them take God out of glass. Star draw girl, send man gone a mask. Them all want put baby in a man ass. No make the concrete cover up the green grass. Well, concrete boys and girls, concrete world, everywhere that's written. A concrete, 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 sight of what really matters, you know. A family, of friends, the earth, the events, you know. The animals of the world, the trees of the garden, you know. Don't make them cover the earth with the cement, you know. Technology is supposed to bring us closer, yet it seems to be pulling us apart, you know. We walk past each other, we don't say hi, we don't say hello. We just push our face on our cell phone and keep it moving, you know. And that no right. Or if you text your son and him in the next room, people, what a god!